is the government telling the truth on that, or are you telling the truth on that? By which I mean, who's lying?
I've got the letter here from Grant Shapps, and it's really important with respect to give me time to just explain what it says. It says, this letter sets out the agreement. This package is subject to the conditions set out in this letter. This funding package is conditional on agreement from TfL on the conditions below. And I'll read you the immediate reintroduction of the London congestion charge, LEZ and ULEZ, and urgently bring forward proposals to widen the scope and levels of these charges in accordance with the relevant legal powers.
Okay,
And
so
who actually set the £15 figure? Who set the extended hours at night, and who made it 7 days a week? The government or you?
Well, the government says we've got to widen the scope.
No, I'm just asking who made those decisions on pricing and hours and days.
Sure, it's TfL, it's us, but they
So
don't.
it's you.
But widen the scope, they don't mean reduce the hours.
Yeah, and it seems to me like what you're doing is passing the buck, as you do so often, Mr. Mayor. The reality is, you set the pricing for this congestion charge. You decided to make it go to 10 o'clock at night. You decided to run it over weekends. And my second question would be, obviously many of the people that will be doing this, will be using their cars to get to work, maybe NHS staff, they might be teachers, they might be police officers, firefighters, all those essential workers that have to get to work. So are they now having to pay this extra punitive charge 7 days a week that you've implemented?
You're going to both points, please. So the first point is in relation to widening the scope and the level of charges.
No, I've got that, but you're the one who decided what that scope should be. My question, so own the scope that you then went for, and just tell me, are all these essential workers now having to pay these punitive extra charges to use their cars, having been told by the Prime Minister to use their car and not public transport?
Okay, well, had I not widened the scope as I'm planning to do, or increase the charges, I'd have been in breach of the agreement.
No, I'm asking you if all the essential workers are having to pay it, if they drive.
So those who work in the NHS and those who work in care homes, who are often in contact with people who are either vulnerable, they could be shielding, or they could have underlying health conditions and may have tested positive, they're exempt from the congestion charge.
What about teachers, police officers, firefighters?
No,
they're all paying it, right?
The intention is for all others, if they have to go to work using their car, they have to pay the congestion charge when it changes.
£100 a week.
We've not brought in the change yet, although the government wants us to do it urgently. We've not brought it in yet. We're deliberately asking people to respond.
You're really going to charge essential workers £100 a week to use their car during a crisis of this magnitude, when they have to go to work to actually work to save our lives? I mean, is that what you're going to be doing?
But I'm being told I've got to immediately reinstate the congestion charge. We've agreed on that.
You only do what the government tells you to do, Mr. Khan, or are you an independent London mayor?
It's an agreement for us to receive the one.
Why did you agree to it? If you don't agree with it, why did you agree to it?
Because the alternative was us last Thursday having to issue a Section 114 notice, which would have meant by law us having to reduce tube services and reduce bus services because the amount of money in reserves wasn't enough to pay for 2 months of services.
Is anything ever your fault, Mr. Mayor? Is anything ever your fault? I mean, so far, apparently, the deaths of 29 bus drivers, not your fault. Apparently it's all safe. You said it was safe to use public transport, but clearly it wasn't. That's not your fault. You're listening to advisors. The congestion charge, you've set the prices, you've made it 7 days a week, you've made it 10 p.m. at night. That's not your fault. Is there anything that goes on in this city that is actually your fault? Or is it always somebody else's fault?
I've got to answer your questions honestly. You've asked me questions I've tried to respond to. The buck stops with me. I'm the Mayor of London. One of the reasons why I'm calling for an independent public inquiry is for all these sorts of issues to be examined, not just with the benefit of hindsight, but in real time.
No, public inquiry will take. Listen, I'm sorry. A public inquiry, as you know, will take. A public inquiry will take. It will take years. A public inquiry. I remember this after the Iraq War. It took years. We haven't got years, Mr. Mayor. These essential workers are going to work today. They've been told by the Prime Minister to stay off public transport on health grounds and to use their cars. You've made it impossible for many of them to use their cars. What are they going to do? You've also promised us that you were going to make things safer for bus drivers. That's when 9 were dead. Now 29 are dead. We haven't got time for a public inquiry in 2, 3, 4 years' time to try and make it safer for people to use your public transport, have we?
Again, you raise a number of points there, Piers, with respect.
There's one simple point. We haven't got time to wait for years for a public inquiry. We've got to get these things right now. No essential workers should be paying £100 a week to use their car in London in this crisis. Shame on you for making them do it, and I suspect you're going to have to reverse some of this, and my advice would be to get on with it, because these people need to get to work, and you at the moment are making it impossible. We've got to leave it there, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for joining us. Listen, we appreciate you coming on. You always come on, even when you know you may get a tough time, and I appreciate that.
Can I have 10 seconds,
Yes,
please?
have
10 seconds.
Please. So, in relation to bus drivers, Piers, you're right, we can't wait a number of years. That's why UCL will do this review. They'll report back in 2-3 weeks, and I promise to implement what they advise. In relation to essential workers, I am grateful to them, but I'm required by the government to do this, or I don't get the grant, and our buses and tubes have to stop. I'm not willing to do that.
You weren't told what to do by the government. You were given an idea of what to do, and you decided to make it as punitive as possible. All right.
They said immediately reinstate, Piers. Immediately reinstate.
It didn't say immediately reinstate 15 quid a day, 7 days a week, running till 10 o'clock. It didn't. That was you. You decided that.
Piers, it says widen the scope and level of charges urgently.
You're the one that decided what the charge should be. Own it. Just own it. If you want to charge teachers and police officers and firefighters who use their car because they've been told not to use public transport, if you want to charge them 100 quid a week, own it. Don't try and pass the buck.
Piers, I come on to answer your question. I think you've got to be fair in relation to what I'm trying to say.
You've read out the clause from the government, which was part of the agreement that you signed up to, and that said you had to widen the scope. It didn't tell you how to widen the scope.
No, but had we widened the scope less than we have,
right,
had we increased charges less than we had, we'd be in breach of the agreement. And what's important is the money from the government only lasts 4.5 months. I'm frustrated by my lack of powers and lack of resources as well. But I always come on here and answer your questions.
No, I give you credit for doing that. But each time you've come on, you've made statements about stuff, whether it's safe to use the transport system, whether without any social distancing, when Italy was being run over, whether it's saying that you're going to get on top of bus drivers being killed. It was 9 when you said that, it's now 29. Now you've got the congestion charge issue. And my simple thing to you is, you are the Mayor of London. You're an elected official to do your job on our behalf. I'm a Londoner, and I don't want to keep hearing you pass the buck of responsibility to other people.
Okay.
I want you to own it.
But we're grateful for you coming on the programme, Sadiq.
Work with me to lobby the government for more powers and more resources, which are the powers and resources Londoners want the Mayor to have.
We've got to leave it there, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
17 minutes past 8. You're watching Good Morning.